Well, good afternoon, everybody. I wanted to take this time and update all of you on the extreme weather that we're experiencing here in the state of California, and a year of extremes where, as I've said often, the hots are getting hotter, the dries are getting drier, the wets, we're looking forward to winter season in these atmospheric rivers. The wets are getting wetter. The winds are also whipping up. This time is typical. The Diablo and the Santa Ana winds tend to present themselves, but we have seen some really extraordinary wind events in the last 48 hours. Subsequent, not surprisingly, the challenges with low humidity and the dry air is creating these rather extreme and dangerous fire conditions throughout the state of California. Just to put it in perspective, we had wind gusts of 140 miles per hour. I mean, those are hurricane-level winds in Kirkwood and their ridgetop. 140-mile-an-hour wind gusts, 96-mile-an-hour wind gusts around the San Gabriel Mountains. And, of course, those of you down in Orange County know well the extraordinary gusts that you're experiencing and just the ongoing winds. But 88 miles per hour was recorded just in Orange County. So we have these red flag warnings. The red flag warnings we anticipate to end today in Northern California, that we believe and we anticipate by 5 o'clock today for the substantial portions of Northern California. The red flag warnings will end in Southern California later into the evening around 11 p.m. Broadly, we will experience a reduction in the winds between now and Thursday, but the most extreme wind events, we believe, will present themselves later today in the evening, and most hopefully are behind us. So again, red flag warnings end today in Northern California earlier than in Southern California, and substantial reductions in the wind across the state by Thursday. As it relates to these challenges induced by the winds now and some of the wildfires that we've experienced, some 42 initial starts in the last 24 hours, meaning 42 wildfires had ignited just in the last 24 hours. It's an extraordinary testament to CAL FIRE that you don't know about most of those. They suppressed the vast majority of those. I'll highlight a few that we're struggling with. But again, unlike baseball World Series being played so often is the case, CAL FIRE doesn't get credit for saves. They deserve credit for saves. The extraordinary work they do every single day that doesn't generate headlines is also deserving of praise. And I just want to acknowledge that up front. With these wins, to be able to suppress 42 initial starts is a remarkable effort, and I want to just applaud their leadership and our mutual aid system up and down the state of California. But still, because of two larger fires, which I'll get to in a moment, we had at peak about 100,000 people that were evacuated, primarily in Southern California. Currently, about 90,710 are currently evacuated in the state. Most of those evacuees are in non-congregate shelters pursuant to our COVID-19 protocols. Most of them are in settings that allow people to isolate, focused on their health, not just their safety, in hotels and motels. I'll remind people this historic wildfire season, 4.2 million acres have burned, 3.2 million just since August. We're currently battling 14 major fires, and complexes still have 5,000+ firefighters working the lines up and down the state of California. Tragically, just a reminder, 31 fatalities so far this fire season, and some 9,358 structures have been completely destroyed. Many times more have been damaged, but close to 10,000, as you can see there, structures have been destroyed in this historic wildfire season. Here are the two fires that have generated understandable stress and generated a lot of attention, particularly in Southern California, both in Orange County. This is Orange County and around Irvine, 5% contained, the Silverado fire. It's taken a little over 11,000 acres, and that's a few hours ago. I imagine that number is higher at this moment. We were able to receive, and I want to just thank FEMA and our partners at the federal level and federal government for their support of our FMAG, which secures the capacity for us us to get reimbursed, 75% reimbursements for suppression activity related to that fire. And that was done in a very timely way, and as always, we're incredibly grateful and appreciative of their responsiveness. The Blue Ridge Fire, also in Orange County, Yorba Linda area. This is 0% contained, 7,000 acres, also part of that FMAG that we received from the federal government. So those are the two active wildfires, primarily grass fires. There have been some structure losses in these fires, not as significant as some may have anticipated, particularly with these wind gusts over 80 miles an hour in and around the area. Again, testament to the extraordinary work that's being done by local firefighters, not just our state firefighting force, CAL FIRE. Let me just, though, extend a point of consideration and appreciation, and also a somber point. We have two firefighters that are in critical condition out of Orange County, and our hearts and prayers go out to their families and their speedy recovery. It just shows the extraordinary heroism of these men and women that go on the front lines, that quite literally put their lives on the line to protect your property and to protect your lives. They succumb to rather serious and critical injuries. And so again, hearts go out, and we're giving them all the best wishes and, of course, the best care we possibly can. And to all of our firefighters up and down the state, I know how impactful it is when one of their own is injured. And so again, stay safe and continue to do the extraordinary work that you have been doing in this historic wildfire year. Just to put it in perspective, we talk in historic terms. Just a quick update on the largest wildfire in recorded history in the state of California. I'll remind you that 6 of the top 20 wildfires in our state's history have occurred in 2020. 6 of the top 20 in 2020, the largest being the August complex, over 1 million acres. Last week we updated you, 82% contained, making progress. A stubborn complex in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service, 93% now contained. You can see they've been able to hold the line even with the winds and keeping this in around 1 million acres. The Creek Fire, we had some issues with the winds, but we were able to hold fairly strong on the line as it relates to the Creek Fire. Of course, gotten a lot of attention. This is, again, in and around the area where we lost a substantial number of trees to the drought. So you have extreme conditions. You add that wind overlay the last 48 hours. Stubborn one, 61% contained last week, 63% contained this week. You see about 24,000 additional acres that have burned. Again, partnership with the U.S. Forest Service and joint command with CAL FIRE. We continue to keep you updated on those two complexes. 14, though, active up and down the state of California, 2 new ones in Orange County, and 5,000 plus firefighters continue to do extraordinary work in these extraordinary conditions in our state. Speaking of extraordinary, I want to just applaud the leadership of the states of Oregon, states of Washington, and Nevada. We had a call, as we do with our Western States Coalition, this collaborative we put together a number of months ago in the beginning of this pandemic. Our chiefs of staff connected on a consistent basis. Governors connected on a consistent basis as well. I just had a wonderful conversation with Governor Brown on issues related to vaccine safety, wildfires, as well as some issues related to some dams that we share in the northern part of our state and the southern part of her state in Oregon. We had conversations that led to consideration to join our efforts here in the state of California to review vaccines, their efficacy and safety. We announced last week a vaccine safety work group focusing on equity, focusing on transparency, focusing on building trust so that we're not playing politics with the distribution of vaccine. We're not playing with people's lives or the emotion around the vaccines and when they'll be safely available. We want to make sure it's done in a sober and thoughtful way, objective, scientific way. We have the best and the brightest. We're so proud of California. I'm so proud of this country in terms of the human resources that we have at these research institutions and institutions of higher learning. And so we worked with those governors, and they're joining now formally our safety committee. We'll be adding some of their experts as well, building out even more broadly our work group. We're really proud of that, proud of this partnership, proud of those governors and the work that they're doing in this very difficult time. And again, all of us are preparing for the distribution of these vaccines and building trust with you and making sure that they're done, not just expeditiously, at least made available, but done safely. Accordingly, and I just remind you, this slide, the biostatistics, the experts in biostatistics and epidemiology to pediatric infectious diseases and health equity and others that are part of this work group that are monitoring these vaccine trials, just to give you again a sense of the resumes of some of the folks from UCLA, Stanford, Berkeley, and many other extraordinary institutions that are already deeply engaged with the federal government on the vaccine protocols, now more formally working with all of these other states. But we're adding a new group today, 16 members of this new group. It's called a Drafting Guidelines Work Group. This is a focus on the ethics of distribution. Who should be prioritized? How do we allocate the supplies? How do we not only do so safely, the Scientific Review Committee, but do so with a sense of urgency and prioritization, the most vulnerable related to concerns of the transmission of this disease that have comorbidities or in congregate settings, that are in our skilled nursing facilities or residential care facilities, that are most vulnerable based on age or other modalities. Those are the guidelines that we are putting out, prioritization of those cohorts and those groups. But we want to be guided, again, by experts, and we're going to be guided by experts in immunization, of course, but also geriatrics, which is foundational, ethics, epidemiology, and again, health equity and pharmacy practice. So 16 members of this work group. We just put out their names, just put out a press release. You can go to our COVID-19.ca.gov website, COVID-19.ca.gov website to learn more about the individuals that are part of this drafting guidelines work group. Dr. Galley will come up in a moment. He'll talk a little bit more about this group in comparison, in contrast to the safety group, as he updates you on the movement between tiers. Now our 8th week since we put out the tiered, those color-coded tiered status. He'll talk about the movement, and he'll also be updating on some of the more specifics related to the purpose of the creation of this work group and what he's hoping comes out of that work group. But what I want to update you on first is numbers you're very familiar with, numbers that have been trending slightly up. The case numbers here in the state of California, the last 24-hour period, we've recorded 3,188 total number of new positive COVID cases here in the state. The 14-day average, slightly higher than that at 3,699. And I should note that if you look at just the 7-day average, the 7-day average is higher still at 4,303. And I say that because I look at the 7-day, not just the 14-day average. Again, as I suggest, it's starting to trend up slightly. What I mean by slightly, take a look at this slide. You'll see the 14-day positivity rate. That's, again, the total number of tests that we conduct and the percentage of individuals that test positive. We are never ashamed of testing more people, and we're not ashamed of identifying those that have been tested positive, as the purpose of testing is around taking care of people's needs related to their isolation and quarantine or their medical needs. That's the purpose of testing. Again, nothing to be ashamed of. We want to substantially increase the number of tests here in the state of California, but we want to keep that positivity rate down. Even as the total number of cases go up, which I know generates headlines, the real headline for us in terms of alarm bells and red flags is that positivity rate. The positivity rate over a 14-day period is holding below 3%. It's been trending down, and now we're starting to see it go slightly back up, but still below 3%. It's at 3.2% on the 7-day. So 14-day, little bit more stability. 7-day, again, we're starting to see some modest increase. 133,000, just shy of 134,000. Average number of daily tests was 144,000. Yesterday, we got just shy of 200,000 tests over the weekend, over a 24-hour period. So we're starting to see those test numbers go up. We'll be announcing later this week efforts to substantially increase the total number of tests with our new lab facility down in Valencia, which we'll highlight this Friday. But nonetheless, the positivity rate's still below 3%, but starting to trend modestly back up. Let's take a look at hospitalizations and ICUs. Hospitalizations are also beginning to trend slightly back up. 4.7% increase over the last 14 days in new hospitalizations, as well as an increase of 5.9% in ICU admissions over a 14-day period. Now, the good news is overall statewide, we're still trending below where we've been for quite some time in terms of total number of admissions in ICUs and hospitals. So capacity remains ample. But nonetheless, we saw weeks and weeks, candidly, months or a month plus of declines, double-digit declines pretty consistently over those 14-day bands. Now you're seeing modest increases as we reverse that a little bit. We start to see some plateauing and some stabilization, slight increase over the last 14 days. So we're monitoring this. We're watching this closely. And Dr. Galley will come up in a moment and tell you what he's been seeing at the local level, parts of Southern California, Imperial County, in region what we refer to as 1 near San Luis Obispo, where we're monitoring some modest increases as of late. We're working very closely with those counties and their health officers and continuing to prepare for our winter months where more people start mixing, holidays when more people start coming over and enjoying the holidays outside of their core household cohorts. And we're obviously concerned about the prospects of seeing these admissions go up and seeing these hospitalization rates go up. But what we are seeing, and I'll just briefly preview with last week's tiered status, is continuing momentum out of the most restrictive tier, purple, 12 counties last week. In the most restrictive tier. This week, you'll see 7 counties. Dr. Galley will lay out the 7 counties that are moving through tiers. None have fallen back this week, which is encouraging. 7 counties moving through either into red, into orange, or now even into yellow, the least restrictive tiers. So with that, sort of teeing up your Tuesday at noons with Dr. Galley, here's his update on the tiered status and an update as well on this new work group that we announced today. Doctor?
Thank you, as always, Governor. Just before we get into the tiers, I want to spend a minute on the exciting progress announced today on vaccines. Last week, we talked about one of the first pillars of our vaccine strategy. I'll remind you that we submitted, like all states, a plan, a comprehensive plan, noted to be one of the most comprehensive plans in the nation about being prepared for distribution of the vaccine when it's ready. To the CDC and our federal partners just over a week ago. And today we're announcing that second pillar of our 3-pillar strategy, one that scientific safety review committee made up of experts in California, now joined by experts from 4 other surrounding states, that will look at the evidence, all of the data, ensure that it's complete and that we're transparent, not in any way to delay vaccine distribution, but to reinforce and support what we hope the federal government's going to share with us, which is a strong bit of evidence about the safety and all of the rigor that goes into getting a vaccine prepared for distribution to people. Today, the drafting guidelines subcommittee or committee coming together to really talk about some of those hard questions about when we only have handfuls of doses, who should get them, supporting our frontline healthcare workers, as the governor alluded to, those who are most vulnerable, those in congregate facilities, skilled nursing facilities, other places, really looking at that first group of Californians eligible to get the vaccine. And then later, as we get more vaccine, but then not enough for everyone, how do we roll it out? And how do we have these two thoughtful groups working together that, in my view, are going to prepare California to be ready when we get the vaccine. In no way delaying distribution, but preparing ourselves like few other states are going to be able to. So we look forward to that work. I look forward to hearing the advice of those committees as we guide and work with our county partners. I'll remind you the experts are not just from our esteemed academic universities around the state, but also practical individuals at the county level, working in pharmacies, nurses who work with patients today, lots of different experts so that we have a rich set of input from across California. So today, as the governor mentioned, normally we update the tier status by Zoom. Today, I have the privilege of doing it alongside the governor. Last week, we had 12 counties go to purple. We saw that was 2 counties that actually moved back from red tier to the purple tier. 23 counties in red last week, 14 in orange, and 9 counties in yellow. Today we have 9 counties in purple, so 3 counties moving forward. Actually 2 counties moving forward, and Shasta County, who we worked closely with to look at their most recent data and worked with that county and maintained them in the red tier. We now have 22 counties in red, 17 in orange, and 10 in yellow. If we go way back to the beginning of our tier system, we had 38 counties in purple. Quite a bit of movement. Only 2 counties in yellow, now 10. So we've seen, as we've talked to you about the slow and stringent approach of our blueprint, that counties are moving through, are beginning to see some increased openings of various sectors and increasing the occupancy of those sectors that have been open for quite some time. So to be more specific, purple to red this week are Glenn and Mendocino counties, 2 counties I've had the privilege of working pretty closely with over the last couple of months to make interventions to reduce transmission, to increase testing, and to watch closely their hospital capacity. So that's important news for those 2 counties. Red to orange, Contra Costa, Marin, San Mateo, and Santa Cruz. And then orange to yellow, Calaveras County. And as the governor mentioned, no counties are moving back in the tier system. We do have a number of counties, you can see which counties those are, who we are concerned about moving back in the future. We're working closely with their public health teams and other leaders in their counties to ensure that we are digging into the data, understanding it very well, so that we can take the appropriate steps in partnership with our local partners to make sure transmission is reduced as far and as much as possible. So I'll turn it back to the governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Galley. So progress as it relates to modifying our stay-at-home orders, our industry by industry, sector by sector guidelines, allowing more capacity, more ability for people to move into these new tiers. Again, we provide support and guidelines, but we do not assert that we are mandating people to move quickly through any of these tiers. We still rely on our local health officers. We rely on local elected officials based upon the conditions on the ground, based upon their appetite to support the movement. We continue to work collaboratively and closely with all of them. But good news, nonetheless, this will continue to advance our collective cause of getting closer to reopening our schools safely for in-person education. Again, we have protocols and a process in place, and we have mandates as it relates to requirements on testing and PPE that must be put into place before we can safely reopen for in-person instruction. But nonetheless, the movement that we are announcing here today, Dr. Galley announced, is continuing to advance that effort as, again, we continue to modify and allow for more activity in businesses large and small all up and down the state of California. I'll open up for questions in a moment. I'll leave you at the end with a short PSA around Halloween, very short 10-second PSA that we've been putting out on Halloween, because as we modify, as we go into the holiday season, as people begin to mix, I've got 4 young kids that are running around in their costumes, have been for, seems like 2 or 3 months. We've already gone through 4 or 5 completely molded. Well, you all know the drill, any parents out there, how eager our kids are to buy pumpkins a month and a half out. I'd only advise people, if you do that, don't carve them, as now they have to be cleaned up. But again, I digress only to suggest and say that those activities are commonplace and well-defined, part of our tradition here in the state. We just want to make sure that we're advancing those activities in a safe manner, as Halloween is this weekend. We're also will be putting out soon, I read somewhere, and some folks asserting that we put out guidelines for the holidays. They simply were misled or intentionally were misleading people. We have not put out Thanksgiving guidelines. We've not put out holiday guidelines formally. We'll be putting those out very, very shortly as well, again, as we enter into the holiday season, as we move a lot of activities back indoors because of the weather. We continue to maintain our vigilance and continue to remind you, as always, what you see up here on this list. Wear your mask the extent you can. It's mandated in the state. We want to encourage you to do so indoors when you're in hallways and mixing with other people outside of your core group and household. Physically distance where you can. Continue to sanitize, wash your hands for no other reason. Flu season is among us, and of course, do your best to minimize the kind of mixing that clearly has supported the transmission and increased transmission we're seeing across this country, not just the modest increase we're seeing across this state as of late. So with that, of course, happy to answer any questions.
Adam Beam, AP.
Hi, Governor. There was another issue with the coronavirus data last week that impacted the state's rate of positive cases, and this is at least the second known issue with the data, which your administration relies on to make decisions. Are you confident that you are receiving the best, most accurate data to guide your decisions on this virus?
The answer is absolutely. I'm confident of that, and absolutely am assured with the redundancy that we've now put into place and an overview and oversight committee that we've also organized that information is accurate. We had a modest glitch for a few days, some reporting in one county, but we were able to quickly address that. It didn't substantially or significantly impact any of the tiered status or any of our guidelines that we put out, nor did it impact any of the decision making in real time or more broadly, medium and long term in this state. We also officially transitioned over the weekend into a completely new system that we had announced a number of months back. That finally went into place on Saturday. But with that, let me just ask Dr. Galley, who's standing just a few feet away, 6 feet plus away, to briefly come up, and he also can talk a little bit more specifically about some of the little issues that occurred out of LA County and some of the reporting that we were able to update.
Yeah, thank you, Governor, and thanks for the question. As you point out, a number of days ago, our quality assurance system that was put in place a couple of months ago when we had the more significant concerns around data did what it was supposed to do. It, within 24 hours, found a number of missing files with a number of results that then quickly were brought through the system and given to the counties, as we do every day, to be able to work through and then return those cases once identified and clarified to our official database at the state to be part of the official counts. So in fact, the work from a couple of months ago not only allowed us to move to the new COVID data reporting system that we did move to over the weekend, but it did demonstrate that the quality assurance and sort of eyes and ears on the data program that we put into place worked really, really well. And we were able to work with a number of counties and without basically missing a beat, get that information right back to the state to have them in a timely way affect our numbers. We did with Los Angeles County, spent quite a bit of time over the last week working with Los Angeles County to make sure that the state and the county were aligned with how we were looking at the data, making sure that none of it was missing, and we feel confidently that that backlog is entirely caught up, and we will continue to work with Los Angeles County to make sure there are no data concerns at the moment. I think certainly with the slight increase in case number that we're seeing across the state, that level of concern is heightened to intensify our focus on ensuring that the data that we have is complete and accurate, and that we're sharing numbers with the public, making informed decisions, and assigning counties in our tiering system based on complete, up-to-date, and accurate information.
Next question.
Hi, Governor. I'm hoping you can talk a little bit more about exactly what the vaccine safety work group is going to be reviewing. Is it going to be looking at just the same data that the FDA is going to be looking at from the companies that are developing the vaccines? Or are there going to be additional trials that have to be conducted in California? If you could clarify that. And also speak to whether this might result in any sort of delays in Californians getting vaccines.
Yeah, let me just take the latter part of your question straight on. The answer is no, it will not cause any delays. In fact, we would argue quite the contrary. It's going to increase transparency and trust that I think we are looking for to make sure that we're not doing anything to meet an arbitrary deadline or meet a political deadline. We're not just going to take someone's assurance. We're going to make sure that we are objectively reviewing and be able to put our stamp of approval. Again, why California? Because there's no other state more abundant in terms of its experts and expertise than this state. We would be, I think, foolhardy not to take advantage of some of the world's, not just this country, the nation's leading experts in all of these areas and not bring them to the fore. Accordingly, we are working very collaborative with the CDC. Again, we were one of 5 jurisdictions doing what we refer to as micro-planning. You recall we had socialized some of that work a couple weeks back. Of course, we were starting with the vaccine with an internal work group going back as early as April, but more formally with the CDC in August. We put out a very detailed and comprehensive plan, one of the most robust plans in this country, and now we have governors from around the western states joining the Scientific Safety Review Work Group. And again, top health experts independently reviewing these FDA-approved vaccines. With that, though, Dr. Galley, again, walk back up, and I'm sure he has more to say specifically about the why we think this safety group is so important and why we're not concerned about it impeding the distribution. In fact, only reinforcing the confidence people have in accessing the safe vaccines in a very timely manner. Doctor?
Thank you, Governor. And Sophia, thank you for the question. We certainly have put together a group of individuals who has a long track record and experience, and in fact are exactly the people the federal government look to help look at safety of these new vaccines. There is no plan, and nor has California or any other state expected to continue or duplicate, replicate any trials with vaccines. We are looking at the information, the data that is, a lot of it is publicly reported, but through the eyes of experts can be strengthened and validated in the approach that California shares. And we intend to and are going to work very hard to make sure that the trust of the public is what we have, and sharing this information in a clear, concise way without delay is where we expect and plan to be when those first doses of vaccine arrive to California.
Next question.
Kathy Novak, KCBS Radio.
Hi, Governor. We have some sad news today with the passing of legendary San Francisco City Hall reporter Barbara Taylor. I'm wondering if there's anything you'd like to share about your memories of Barbara.
Not on this spot. You've caught me completely at a loss and surprise. I love Barbara, so let me digest this. Forgive me. I was not aware of her passing or how it occurred, but obviously a legend, and so forgive me. I happily return to that question when I learn more.
Alex Michelson, Fox 11.
Thank you, Governor. I have a question about theme parks. There's a lot of frustration and anger, especially in Anaheim, with folks who say, look, Disney parks have opened all over the world and they're doing okay. Why can't we do this here? This isn't only people that work at the parks, but people who have businesses nearby that are having to shut down, city officials who are losing a lot of tax revenue. What do you say to those folks? Why can't we do this here?
Well, the bottom line is we are seeing an increase in the transmission rates of COVID-19 in the vast majority of states in this nation. That's self-evident, and that should be alarming to all Americans. We're seeing around the world increased case rates, some very notably in countries that tended to experience increased rates at the beginning of this pandemic, about a month or so before we experienced them here in the United States. When you see double-digit increases in the vast majority of states, when you see hospitalization rates increase all across this country, when you see the weather beginning to turn and more people coming back inside and mixing, self-evidently, we should be concerned about opening up a large theme park where by definition people mix from every conceivable walk of life and put themselves and others at increased risk of seeing transmission rates rise related to COVID-19. Now, you bring up one theme park. California has dozens and dozens of theme parks. You bring up one particular operator of a theme park that does things very, very differently than other operators of other theme parks. You have theme parks that are large, theme parks that are smaller. You have theme parks that are really cities that operate convention facilities and hotels and restaurants and organize not just around carousels and other amenities. You see others that are out on beaches and boardwalks that are very, very different. And so you have to design and you have to distinguish and you have to organize not only your response but your guidelines in a way that addresses those unique dynamics, unique background rates, county by county, all experiencing different background rates as it relates to the spread of this virus. But all of that with our eyes wide open on where we are as it relates to this pandemic. The hospitalization numbers here in the state of California, the ICU numbers here in the state of California, now beginning to trend back up. And the holidays in front of us and the concerns that have been expressed by experts worldwide, not just experts nationwide, around their concerns for a second or a third wave, to me, semantics, as it relates to what we have in store for us over the next 6 to 12 weeks. And so respectfully, deep respect, because I understand, again, as someone with 4 young kids, the reverential identity they have with one particular brand that you are identifying and their desire to be entertained and their desire of those that rightfully want to get their jobs back and to get back to some sense of normalcy. Forgive me, but we as a state are going to be driven by data and science, and we're going to be driven by public health first.
Bill Whelan, LA Times.
Governor, in Sutter County, there's a legal challenge or a lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of your executive order to mail ballots to all registered voters in California. And the lawsuit says that you overstep your authority under the Constitution and you made new law, which violates the separation of powers. Were you ruling by fiat, especially at the beginning of the pandemic, and will you be more measured in the future?
We did what we felt was appropriate, certainly within the framework of the constitutional authority that is invested in this office, the executive branch. As you know, we were very forthright, very transparent in our desire to safely conduct an election this November, a week from today. We moved forward, not just through executive order, as you know well, but through legislation to codify the executive order, to clarify and to organize a construct where we weren't only mailing out ballots to every active registered voter in the state of California, but also providing for ample alternatives to mail-in ballots for people that would prefer in-person balloting, but do so in a safe way to make sure the environment was conducive to the expression of one's fundamental and constitutional right to assemble for the purpose of advancing democracy through the ballot box, but also do so in a safe way. And so, no, I don't think the executive order broke that spirit, nor the letter constitutional law, and I'm very, very grateful to the legislature for codifying that through a legislative process.
Final question, Jeremy White, Politico.
Hey, Governor, thanks as always. So I know you said that this multi-state vaccine group will not cause any slowdown in vaccine approvals, but I'm curious, as you are adding more experts to this panel, including from other states, is there a possibility that if you don't have unanimity, you could have, for example, an expert from Oregon blocking the distribution of vaccines in California if they deem them not safe?
No, look, every governor wants to maintain their autonomy to move forward as they choose. None of us are outsourcing that to an advisory group. We're being advised by this group of experts. We would be foolhardy not to take advantage of some of the world's leading experts in all of these disparate categories. And I think I guess, my fundamental point is I'm just blessed. We're blessed to be able to develop partnerships outside our state, to develop partnerships from disparate experts in a myriad of different fields, to build on the work that we're already doing as it relates to the distribution and transmission of vaccines that we have advanced not only through flu, but also N1, H1N1, et cetera. But we're just blessed, to have biostatisticians, to have epidemiologists that are best in class, and people that are experts in financing and really have a sense of supply chains, and will look at the efficacy and safety of these vaccine trials, not just in terms of the vaccine itself, but the protocols related to the vaccines, to make sure that they're safely distributed, that they're safely transported, that they're safely stored, that we're having a mindset of safety related to public data, or rather private and personal data. What's that line? What's that distinction? And so all of that is part and parcel of this review work group. And again, I think it's self-evident by the advancement of these other governors in their willingness to join this group that there's there's support in this space. And so we look forward to their adjudication of this process, and we look forward to building more trust in this process over the course of the next weeks and months. And we look forward, as parents, all of us, to this Halloween, and making sure that as parents we're keeping everybody safe. And it's in that spirit that I'll end, reminding you, as always, first, to wear a mask, physically distance, wash your hands, minimize the extent possible mixing, enjoy your Halloween. We'll be back Friday to update you on some testing, but so I may encourage you once again, but I felt remiss if I didn't share with you this 10-second Halloween PSA as we go.